a world market. Now, when Marx wrote those lines, there was absolutely no empirical evidence for this whatsoever, because there was only one capitalist country in existence, and that was England. France was at its early beginnings. Germany was still in the future. There was no question of a capitalist world market when you wrote those lines. And yet, if you take the world of the 21st century, the most important fact of this epoch in which we live is precisely the crushing domination of the world market, globalization, from which no economy, no national economy can now escape. This was explained and predicted in advance scientifically by Marx 150 years ago. Let me give you another example. When Marx wrote the manifesto, there were no big industries anywhere. There were no big factories anywhere. In Britain, the workshops were quite small affairs. In France, even smaller. And yet Marx predicted what he referred to as a process of the concentration of capital. That's to say, an enormous accumulation of wealth and power and riches at one end of society, and a concentration of industry and wealth at one end of society, and at the other end a growing poverty, immiseration, and so on of the mass of working people. Now, if you look at present-day society, in my opinion, this has been entirely borne out. Although, for decades, I remember when I was young and handsome and slim, like you said, don't laugh, it's true, about 100 years ago, when I was in university, even when I was at school, I remember, no, it's all nonsense. Marx, there's no concentration of capital, it's all wrong. In the last 20 years, the economists even put forward a formula. You may have heard of this. Small is beautiful. You heard of that? Small is beautiful. Well, I don't know. My wife is small, but she's also beautiful. But that's nothing to do with it. It's not an aesthetic question. What they meant to say is that the future of capitalism will be small factories, small businesses with the entrepreneur, the courage of the spirit, taking risks and all the rest of this stuff, the market economy. Okay, what's the truth? What's the facts? This so-called market economy, which operates on the basis of the law of the jungle, just collapsed approximately 3 years ago in the biggest crisis, certainly since the 1930s. They admit this themselves. By the way, you read the economists for the last 20 years, they were insistent that no such crisis would ever happen again. You read people, even Gordon Brown said that. You heard of Gordon Brown? Yes. No, he's a forgotten man now. But anyway, Gordon, yes, he said this. Yeah, he was the man was so foolish as to make this. He said, the boom-bust cycle is finished. You remember that winged phrase? The Tories now reminding you of that. Yes, but they all sang the same song. They all thought the same thing. Marx is out of date. Marx is old-fashioned. Marx predicted the crisis. Where's the crisis? Where's the crisis? Here's the crisis. The biggest crisis for the last 60 years, according to their own statements, in my opinion, perhaps the biggest, the most profoundest crisis in the history of capitalism. Quite likely. You could argue that. The system's broken down. Oh, by the way, what happened to market economics? What happened to the law of the fittest? And the entrepreneurial spirit and the courage and the risk-taking and so on? What happened to it? They made the bankers in particular, made huge, vast, obscene profits. For the last 20 or 30 years, the moment they hit trouble and the whole thing collapsed, it was bound to collapse, it did collapse. What did they do? What did they say? Oh, no, the state mustn't interfere. Private enterprise, the state, the market, state mustn't, government mustn't, there must be no regulations. There were regulations to control the banks. 20 years ago, they made a bonfire under Thatcher. They made a bonfire of these regulations. No. Entrepreneurial spirit, market economics, bound to succeed. Government mustn't interfere. Okay. The moment that these gangsters collapsed, what did they do? Immediately go running to the government of the United States, the United Kingdom, France. Oh, give us money. We're broke. Give us money. Incidentally, you know what happens with poor students? You've all taken out a loan, I assume, you know. If you get into debt, which probably some of you will, you run up a debt. Can you go to the bank, to the government or the bank and say, oh, no, look, I've got a debt, give me money. I need money, give me money. Can you do that? What do you think would happen? You certainly wouldn't get any money. You'd get the grand order of the boot. But these big guys, the bankers, go running to the government, and the government comes with an open checkbook. Here, take $1 trillion, $2 trillion, take what you want. To fill the gaps caused by their speculation, the criminal speculation. And then the next day they say, oh, look, we got a deficit. The state, because the state hasn't got any money, you see. We got a deficit. We've got to solve this, we've got to cut unnecessary things. Bankers are not unnecessary, of course. No, we've got to cut universities, cut teachers, cut health service, cut child benefit, cut pensions, so on. Now, can you make any sense of this economics? Can you understand the logic of that? As I can. Now, and the big question is this. What happened to the market spirit? What happened to the entrepreneurs? What happened to the... Where's the risk? There is no risk, for God's sake. If a group of bankers can run up billions and trillions of pounds worth and then go to the taxpayer and demand the money with menaces, which, by the way, is a criminal offence. There is nothing left of this nonsense. Not one stone upon another is left of the market economy, capitalism, and all. It's shown to be a fake, a false argument from start to finish. But to go back to the concentration of capital, which wasn't supposed to exist, which is predicted in the pages of the manifesto, what are the facts? I'll tell you the facts. The whole of this vast world economy which controls your lives. You think I'm talking about abstract things here? Theories which have got no bearing on human existence and you're very much mistaken. This vast mechanism, the world economy, dictates your future, dictates the entire future of the whole priorities of the human race are dictated by this, by the law of the jungle. Okay, who controls this world economy? Well, I'll tell you. Approximately 200 gigantic transnational companies control the entire economy of the world. Okay? The big majority of them are based in the United States. Not all of them. Some are Japanese, some are even British, some are French, some are German, some are even Chinese now. 200 gigantic companies that control the destinies of the human race. Fact. Okay? Now, if this isn't the concentration of capital, I don't know what is. I already described the other end of the scale. 1.2 billion people living in conditions of absolute poverty, of which 8 million die every year because they haven't got enough money to live on. Now, I'm not making out a moral case here. I'm not much interested in morality. I am not saying that this system is good, bad, or indifferent. What I am saying is it does not work. That's what I'm saying. And I'm also saying that the analysis, if you want to understand the reasons why it breaks down, you'd have to go back and read the works of Marx. Now, let's deal with the question, because the subject of the discussion also is what is Marxism? Well, that's a big subject, which I will not have time to deal with tonight. Perhaps we can have future discussions and discuss point by point what Marxism is. But first of all, let me dispel a few misconceptions. There are many misconceptions, which, by the way, are malicious falsehoods which are put into circulation by interested parties. First mistake. Oh, Marxism. Didn't Marx and Engels say that you could reduce everything to economics? It's all a question of the productive forces. You know. What absolute balderdash. What absolute nonsense. How is it possible to reduce everything to economics? It's foolishness. Marx and Engels didn't just deal with economics, they dealt with history, politics, philosophy. They started off as philosophers, as I will explain in one moment. No. Marx never said any such thing. You could reduce everything to economics. What they did say, and it is absolutely true, and I will repeat it now, choose my words very carefully. In the last analysis, I repeat, in the last analysis, the viability of any socio-economic system, including capitalism, is determined by its ability to develop the means of production. Yes, 1000% correct. And then can anyone deny this? Because in the last analysis, the success, the viability of any human society must be determined by its ability to provide the needs of life for people, for all people. In other words, before one can think beautiful thoughts, as you've all come here to ULU, no doubt you've come here deliberately to think beautiful thoughts, and good luck to you. But the question is, before you can think beautiful thoughts about religion or politics or philosophy or art or anything else, first of all, you have to eat. Or no, even students have to eat occasionally. Yeah? You have to eat, you have to have clothes on your back, you have to have a roof over your head, or not. Oh yes. Oh yes. Even Stephen Hawkins or what's the other chap, so-called artist? Damien Hirst and so on. They have to eat, they have to have clothes on their back, and they have a very nice house, actually. That's another discussion. And therefore, a society must provide these things first, before anything else can be created. That's a fact. And it's a condemnation of this particular system that it is not capable of guaranteeing these things for the people of this planet at the present time. That's the condemnation. Anyway, to go back. Marxism actually started out not as economics at all. Marxism was born as a philosophy. It's a philosophy. It remains a philosophy, as a matter of fact. Marx and Engels began when they were young students like yourselves, students of philosophy, particularly a student of the great philosopher. Marvelous, found rather difficult to read, but tremendously profound philosopher called Hegel. Hegel was an idealist. Marx and Engels were philosophical materialists. That's another matter. But Hegel had an idea of a brilliant idea, a very profound idea, a very beautiful idea, which is called dialectics. Many people are frightened by this. Marxist philosophy is called dialectical materialism. Many people are put off. They think, oh, this is very difficult. It's not difficult at all, as a matter of fact. And it's in two parts. So let's deal with dialectics first. Dialectics, by the way, was not invented by Marx, was not invented by Hegel either. It's a very old idea. It was right back. The first European philosopher to deal with this was, in my opinion, a marvelous old philosopher called Heraclitus, one of the great Greek philosophers, whose collected works are about 10 pages, I think. It's all that's left. But they're very profound aphorisms. I won't go into that now. But the idea of dialectics, which has surfaced continuously over thousands of years, you could even argue, it's possible to argue, you could find elements of dialectics even in things like Buddhism and Hinduism. It is possible to argue that, which reflects a profound reality about nature, which is the following. Everything moves. Everything constantly changes. It's a dynamic philosophy. That's what makes it so exciting and so modern. Heraclitus summed it up in one of his marvelous aphorisms. He said, everything changes, nothing remains the same. He said, it is impossible. He said, no man can step in the same stream twice because it's gone. In other words, it's a conception of the whole universe, not as something static and fixed, but something that's constantly flowing, constantly moving, constantly changing. But it's not only that. In this day and age, most people, I think, most educated people at least, accept the idea, for example, of evolution. Before Darwin, marvelous, profound contemporary of Marx, Marx thought very highly of Darwin. He was going to dedicate capital to Darwin. He sent the dedication, but Darwin, I think, politely refused because he had enough trouble on his plate with the church and so on, so he thought it wasn't very wise.